There's a strange moment that comes to everyone, though most spend their lives running from it. It doesn't arrive with thunder or warning. It slips quietly into your chest, like a shadow that finally caught up. You're lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling, feeling a weight you can't name. Nothing is wrong, not exactly. But something is missing, and it feels like your soul knows it before your mind does. That's the moment you realize no one is coming. For years, I thought life would somehow deliver me where I needed to go, that the right person, the right timing, the right sign would appear and guide me forward. But time kept passing, and nothing arrived. The people I thought would stay left. The opportunities I waited for dissolved. The perfect moment never came. What did come was silence, a silence so heavy it forced me to look inward for the first time. It hit me with an almost violent clarity. I had been living as if my life belonged to someone else. As if some unseen force would eventually give me permission to start. But there is no savior, no miracle waiting around the corner, no voice descending from the sky to say, "Now is your time." Life doesn't knock on your door. It waits, quietly, to see if you'll knock on it. That realization felt like a betrayal at first. The stories were told, that patience brings reward, that faith brings rescue, sound comforting until you realize they've kept you still. The truth is colder, but cleaner. If you don't take responsibility for your direction, you will drift wherever the current pulls you. And the current, by nature, never leads to greatness. I remember the day I stopped waiting. It wasn't dramatic. No epiphany, no grand event. Just a quiet morning, sunlight slipping through the blinds, and a sense that something inside me had cracked. I sat there, staring at the reflection in the mirror, and said to myself, enough. Enough waiting for permission. Enough hoping someone would see my potential. Enough believing that destiny owed me anything. From that moment on, I decided to live as if help would never come, because in that emptiness, I found freedom. When you stop expecting rescue, your power returns. The energy you once scattered chasing approval, begging for guidance, mourning the past, it comes back to you. And when it does, you feel it. A pulse of quiet fire rising from within. It's not confidence, not yet, but it's something deeper. Ownership. The understanding that this life, in all its chaos and uncertainty, is entirely yours to shape. The Stoics understood this centuries ago. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." He wasn't trying to frighten himself. He was reminding himself that time is a luxury, and waiting is its greatest thief. You are not guaranteed another chance to begin. You are not promised the next sunrise, the next opportunity, the next moment of courage. And yet, most of us live as if we have 10,000 years to waste. The danger isn't that we fail, it's that we hesitate. We wait for certainty before we act, for confidence before we speak, for approval before we create. We wait for everything except the only thing that ever mattered, the decision to begin. I used to believe that starting small meant thinking small. That if I couldn't transform my life in one sweeping motion, it wasn't worth starting at all. But progress never arrives in explosions. It arrives in echoes, in steady steps, in days that look ordinary but accumulate into something extraordinary. The day you decide to move, even 1 inch, you separate yourself from the millions still waiting. There's a freedom in realizing no one is coming. Because once the illusion dies, so does the dependency. You begin to see life not as something happening to you, but as something you're constructing. Brick by brick. Choice by choice. I started to observe my own excuses, how cleverly they disguise themselves as reasons. It's not the right time. I need more information. Maybe when I'm ready. But the truth is, readiness is a myth. Nobody wakes up one morning perfectly prepared. Readiness isn't what you wait for. It's what you create through motion. Every act of courage manufactures more courage. Every small discipline builds the foundation for the next. So I began to treat my life as a project, not a performance. Each day became a chance to build, not impress. I learned to replace hope with effort and waiting with work. Slowly, the fog began to lift. The fear didn't vanish, but it lost its power. Because fear feeds on inaction. The moment you move, it starves. Most people think control means commanding others or mastering circumstances. But the Stoics knew better. True control begins the moment you stop outsourcing responsibility. The moment you stop saying, "I'll change when," and start saying, "I'll change now." That's the pivot point. The invisible line that separates those who live deliberately from those who drift endlessly. And maybe that's what life has been trying to teach us all along, that salvation isn't something you find. It's something you build. Every time you keep a promise to yourself. Every time you show up when no one notices. Every time you move forward, even when it hurts. These moments may seem small, but they are sacred. They are the quiet acts of defiance through which you reclaim your freedom. Because here's the truth few will tell you. No one will ever care about your future as much as you must. No one will feel the weight of your wasted time like you will. No one will save you from the emptiness of an unlived life. That burden, that opportunity, belongs to you alone. And once you accept it, fully, completely, everything changes. When you stop waiting, you start living. When you stop chasing rescue, you begin to rescue yourself. And when you finally decide that your path will not be built by luck, but by choice, you'll feel something that no comfort can replace, the quiet, unshakable strength of self-reliance. This is where every Stoic journey begins, not with answers, but with awakening. The moment you stop asking for permission, and start building the life you were meant to live. If this message resonates with you, if it reminds you of something you've forgotten, subscribe to this channel. Join a community that chooses growth over comfort, clarity over noise, and wisdom over distraction. Every new subscriber gives us the strength to keep creating these lessons, not just for motivation, but for mastery. Now let me ask you something before you go. If you knew no one was coming to save you, which would you choose? A. Keep waiting for the perfect moment. B. Begin building yourself today, no matter how imperfectly. Comment your answer, A or B, below. And remember, your choice today decides the direction of everything that follows. When I stopped waiting for someone to save me, I expected peace to follow. It didn't. What came instead was chaos. Quiet, internal, and relentless. When you take back ownership of your life, you also inherit every fear you've tried to bury. It's like pulling back a curtain and finding not clarity, but a storm. That's what no one tells you. Awakening is not gentle. It's violent. It tears through every illusion you've built to feel safe. For the first time, I saw how much of my life had been shaped by fear. Fear of failure. Fear of rejection, fear of being exposed as inadequate. I thought fear meant weakness, but I began to see that fear was simply information. It pointed directly to the places I refused to grow. The Stoics called it the obstacle that becomes the way, but when you first face it, it feels like the way is closing in on you. There were mornings I woke up with dread pressing on my chest, wondering if I was wasting my time, if all my effort would ever amount to anything. Fear whispered in a voice that sounded like logic, "Be careful, don't risk too much. Wait until you're ready." But fear is clever. It doesn't scream, it negotiates. It tries to convince you that hesitation is wisdom, that comfort is safety. Yet every time I listened to it, I felt smaller. The life I wanted seemed to move one step further away. It took me a long time to understand that failure wasn't the real enemy, avoidance was. The longer I delayed, the louder the fear grew. It feeds on stillness, on the space between intention and action. The only antidote is movement, not confidence, not motivation, just action, no matter how uncertain. The moment you act, fear loses its disguise. It stops being a monster in the dark and becomes a problem you can touch, name, and solve. I remember one night when everything in me wanted to quit. The silence was heavy, my thoughts loud. I had failed again. Another plan gone wrong, another promise to myself broken. I sat there in the dim light and realized that what hurt most wasn't the failure itself. It was the feeling that maybe this was who I truly was, someone who tried and always fell short. That thought was poison. It made me want to retreat back into the comfort I had left behind. But something inside refused to let me. I remembered a line from Seneca, "Difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body." I repeated it again and again until I started to believe it. Failure wasn't proof that I was unworthy. It was proof that I was in motion. Every mistake became a scar, but also a map, showing me where I needed to grow. Jung wrote, "The greatest problems of life are not meant to be solved, but outgrown." That line became my anchor. I stopped trying to escape the pain and started letting it shape me. The fear that once controlled me became my compass. Whenever something terrified me, I knew I was close to something important. You start to notice patterns. The people who move forward in life aren't the ones who never fall. They're the ones who treat every fall as fuel. Each failure adds weight, and with weight comes strength. You begin to see that resilience isn't born in success, but in survival. The cracks don't make you weaker. They let the light in. Over time, I learned to welcome fear like an old teacher, unforgiving but honest. It shows up every time you step towards something that matters. It's the shadow that follows progress. The key isn't to fight it, but to walk with it. To move despite the trembling, to speak despite the doubt, to act while your hands still shake. Because courage is never the absence of fear. Courage is carrying fear on your back and still taking the next step. And maybe that's what transformation really is, not becoming fearless, but learning to move faithfully through the fire. The heat never goes away, but you learn to stand inside it until it forges you into something unbreakable. Every failure, every rejection, every moment you thought you were done, it's all part of the furnace. That's the paradox of growth. The pain that once broke you becomes the strength that rebuilds you. The fear that once paralyzed you becomes the compass that guides you. The failures that once humiliated you become the proof that you're alive, that you're in the arena, that you're trying while others only watch. And the longer you stay in that arena, the more you realize fear was never there to stop you. It was there to introduce you to yourself. The more I faced my fears, the stronger I became, but with strength came a new enemy, one far more deceptive than fear itself: distraction. It didn't strike like fear did. It crept in quietly, dressed as rest, as connection, as entertainment, as just a break. But the truth is, distraction doesn't steal your focus all at once. It takes it piece by piece, until there's nothing left of you but fragments. It started small. I'd sit down to work, and somehow an hour would vanish into scrolling. I'd tell myself I was researching, that it was harmless. But every time I gave in, I felt something inside me dull. Not my intelligence, my presence. It was like my mind had become a crowded room where every voice shouted, but none were mine. One night, I looked around and realized I wasn't fighting failure anymore. I was fighting noise. The world had become a constant hum, notifications, headlines, opinions, endless chatter about nothing. And in that noise, I had begun to disappear. I wasn't living, I was reacting, pulled from one stimulus to another like a puppet made of nerves. It's strange how distraction feels like rest but leaves you more exhausted than before. It's the exhaustion of a life scattered across 1,000 empty moments. I began to see that I was losing something sacred, the ability to be alone with my own thoughts. Silence had become uncomfortable, like a space I needed to fill instead of listen to. But silence was the very thing I needed most. I remember walking one evening through the city as the lights flickered on. Everyone's faces were illuminated by screens, glowing rectangles replacing the stars. It hit me then that we had traded depth for stimulation. We no longer seek meaning, We seek novelty. And novelty, like sugar, satisfies nothing. Seneca once wrote, "To be everywhere is to be nowhere." I understood that line for the first time that night. I had been everywhere, checking, watching, scrolling, but I was nowhere truly. My attention, my most valuable possession, was being sold in small doses, and I was the one giving it away. That realization hurt because it forced me to see how much of my life I had diluted in the pursuit of noise. Distraction isn't just the opposite of focus, it's the erosion of identity. The more you let your mind scatter, the less you remember who you are. The less you can hear the voice that tells you what truly matters. So I started to reclaim my attention like a warrior reclaiming lost territory. 1 hour a day without the phone. 1 walk in silence. 1 task done without splitting my mind in half. It felt uncomfortable at first, like withdrawing from an addiction. But slowly, clarity began to return. Thoughts became sharper. The fog began to lift. I could feel my willpower strengthening, like a muscle that had long been asleep. The more still I became, the louder the truth sounded. Focus is freedom. Distraction is slavery. Every time you give your attention to something unworthy, you surrender a piece of your potential. We live in an age where silence is rebellion. To turn off the noise is an act of courage. To sit still and listen to your own mind, to face its chaos, its doubts, its memories, is to begin mastering yourself. That's when I understood why the Stoics valued self-control above all else. The mind that cannot stay still cannot be free. And a life without focus is not a life. It's just movement without meaning. So I began to choose differently. I learned to guard my focus as fiercely as a king guards his throne. Because wherever your attention goes, your life follows. And I refuse to spend what's left of mine chasing noise that leads nowhere. When I finally learned to silence the noise, another challenge emerged: the waiting. The slow, grinding patience that no one talks about. Because once you remove distraction, you're left with the truth. Progress is painfully slow. Growth doesn't happen in cinematic leaps. It happens in invisible inches, in days that feel identical, in effort that seems to vanish into the void. That's the part of the journey that breaks most people. Not the pain, but the waiting. I used to believe that if I worked hard, something would happen quickly. A sign, a reward, some confirmation that I was on the right path. But it didn't come. Days turned into months, and all I had to show for it was discipline and silence. The world doesn't applaud consistency. It ignores it. And in that indifference, I began to understand what the Stoics meant by endurance. There's a strange kind of loneliness that comes when you're doing the right thing, but nothing seems to change. You wake up early, you stay focused, you sacrifice comfort, and yet life looks the same. That's when doubt creeps in, quiet, reasonable, persuasive. It tells you you're wasting your time. It whispers that you're invisible. And it's tempting, in that silence, to believe it. But that's the moment when your real work begins. The work of staying when nothing assures you that you should. I started to see growth as something that happens underground, like roots deepening before a tree breaks the surface. You can't see it, but it's there, alive, expanding, preparing. Every repetition, every choice not to give up, every day you keep your promises, these are the roots of transformation. They don't announce themselves, but one day, they hold up everything. I remember reading Seneca's words, "It is a rough road that leads to the heights of greatness." It struck me because the road isn't rough by accident. It's rough by design. Every obstacle, every delay, every unseen effort, it's there to test your faith in the process. Endurance isn't just survival, it's belief without evidence. It's saying, I will keep going, even when the world gives you no reason to. I had to unlearn the modern obsession with results. We're taught to measure progress in visible outcomes, in views, in numbers, in praise. But real mastery isn't built in public. It's built in the unseen hours when no one's watching and no one cares. The Stoics didn't chase recognition. They cultivated inner strength, the kind that doesn't need applause to know its worth. One night, after another long day that felt like a loop of the last, I sat in the dark and asked myself, why am I still doing this? The answer came not from thought, but from somewhere deeper, because I said I would. That was it. Not for glory. Not for proof. Just a quiet promise to myself, to see how far I could go if I simply refused to stop. That's when patience stopped feeling like waiting and started feeling like power. Because patience isn't passive, it's discipline stretched across time. It's the art of showing up long enough for the invisible to become visible. The truth is, greatness rarely feels great while you're building it. It feels ordinary, repetitive, sometimes unbearable. But one day, you wake up and realize that the things that used to break you no longer move you. That's how endurance transforms you, not suddenly, but completely. And in that realization, you begin to see that every moment of struggle was never wasted. It was shaping you, layer by layer, into something solid, something real, something unshakable. In the quiet that followed endurance, I found something unexpected. Not victory, not recognition, but stillness. At first, it felt unnatural, like standing in a room after the music has stopped. My entire life had been built on motion, ambition, resistance. But now the silence I once feared became the place where everything finally made sense. Because when the noise dies, you begin to hear the only voice that matters, your own. Stillness isn't the absence of movement. It's the mastery of it. It's knowing when to act and when to wait, when to speak and when to let silence do the talking. It's not passivity, it's precision. In that stillness, I began to see that all my striving, all my fighting, had been aimed outward. I was trying to conquer the world, but the real conquest was inward. There's a point in the Stoic path where you stop searching for approval, because you finally understand that no one else can validate your peace. The world will always have its noise, its opinions, its chaos. You can't control it. And the moment you stop trying, you are free. That realization hit me one morning as I watched the sun rise through the window. The world outside was rushing, cars, people, plans, but inside there was only stillness. For the first time, I wasn't in a hurry, I wasn't chasing. I was simply here, and it was enough. I used to believe strength was loud, that it meant being unshaken, untouchable, invincible. But real strength, I've learned, is quiet. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't demand to be seen. It's the calm that remains when everything else falls apart. The man who doesn't need to prove himself has already won the war. Authenticity begins there, in the quiet refusal to perform. The moment you stop needing to be understood, you begin to understand yourself. The moment you stop explaining your worth, it becomes self-evident. And when you stop competing with others, life stops feeling like a race and starts feeling like a journey. The Stoics spoke of living in accordance with nature, not the trees and sky, but human nature, the rhythm of existence itself. We are not built for constant struggle. We are built for balance. To push when it's time, to rest when it's earned, to act with intention rather than impulse. And when you live this way, something profound happens. Peace stops being a goal and becomes your default state. That's the paradox of freedom. It isn't found in doing whatever you want. It's found in mastering what you need. The world will always try to sell you distractions dressed as dreams. It will tell you that more noise means more life, that success means being seen. But the longer you chase it, the further you drift from yourself. The longer I practiced stillness, the clearer everything became. People's opinions lost their power. Outcomes stopped defining me. I began to trust myself again, not because I had all the answers, but because I knew I would face whatever came with composure. That is self-trust, the quiet certainty that no matter what happens, you will not abandon yourself. And once you taste that kind of peace, the world can no longer tempt you with anything lesser. Success without peace feels empty. Fame without authenticity feels like a performance. Even love without self-understanding feels like dependency. When you master yourself, everything you once chased begins to come to you. Not because you begged for it, but because you've become the kind of person who no longer needs it. That's what all the struggle, the fear, the endurance were leading to, not some external reward, but the internal awakening that you were never broken, only buried under noise. Every obstacle, every moment of waiting, every silent day, it was all preparing you to the person you were meant to be. Now when I look back, I don't see a trail of failure. I see evidence of becoming. Each scar, each setback, each sleepless night, they were proof that I stayed. Proof that I didn't turn away when life asked for everything. That's the essence of Stoicism, not to escape pain, but to transmute it. To take everything the world throws at you and use it to refine your soul until nothing external can touch it. To be steady in chaos, clear in confusion, calm in the storm. That's the kind of strength that doesn't fade. It grows quieter, deeper, truer with time. So if you've come this far, if these words reach a part of you that's tired of chasing, let this be your reminder. Peace isn't found, it's built. One decision at a time, one moment of clarity at a time, one breath at a time. Stop running. Be still. Listen. The strength you're searching for has been waiting inside you all along. If this message speaks to something in you, subscribe to this channel. Stay with us. Each week we go deeper into what it means to live deliberately, to think clearly, to walk the Stoic path with courage and calm. Let's build a generation that chooses presence over pressure, purpose over noise, and peace over chaos. Because the world doesn't need louder minds, it needs steadier ones.